All right. Thank you everyone for joining. So we have a good number and a few more may still be trickling in. But this is the webinar Pathways to Low Cost, Low Carbon Apartments. Thank you all for joining. It's been co-hosted by the Bay Area Regional Energy Network and the Solar and Multifamily Affordable Housing Program. So we're really excited. Before we get started, just a few quick housekeeping notes. We're using the Zoom webinar format, which means everyone is automatically muted and has their videos off. So if you have a question that comes up throughout the presentation, you'll see on the bottom of your screen a little Q&A box. Feel free to enter your questions in there. We'll do our best to answer any questions by text during the presentation, and we'll also have about 10 minutes at the end to address anything in the bigger group. If you are having any technical issues like trouble hearing us or seeing the slides, you can go ahead and use the chat box that's just next to that. But for questions related to the content of the presentation, we do ask that you use that Q&A box, and then everyone can see the answers for that. And then finally, this presentation is being recorded, so we will send a recording out to anyone who registered after the event, along with a PDF of the slides and links to all of the programs that we covered today. So what we'll cover today, I'm going to start with some quick introductions, and then we'll talk about just why energy efficiency and solar upgrades matter, why we are government programs trying to encourage that and incentivize that. Talk a little bit about what a sustainable and resilient multifamily building actually looks like. What are the key systems to think about? And then we'll give an overview of the two main programs today, the BAMBE program and the SOMAH program. We'll cover a case study that actually participated in both programs and some of the benefits they got from going through both programs at once. And then finally, some information on how to get started. And then we hope to have 10 to 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. So my name is Chris Hunter. I represent the Bay Area Regional Energy Network. I actually work with Stop Waste, which is a public agency in Alameda County. But Stop Waste manages this multifamily program on behalf of the region. I can explain a little bit more how that works. But we help to run this multifamily program on behalf of the entire Bay Area through BayREN. And so I'll explain a little bit more about who BayREN is. But then the other speaker today is Kaisa Hendrickson with SOMAH, if you want to say hi.
Hey everyone, excited to chat with you today about both of these programs.
Great, thanks. So I'm going to start with just a quick poll just to see who's in the room. So we'll leave this open for maybe 90 seconds or so, just a few short questions to get a sense of who we're actually talking with today. Any new answers come in. So I'm going to end that, share the results here. Okay, so it looks like, we have a pretty good mix of property owners, one property manager, and then a number of people who work in admin or have another role with a nonprofit housing developer, handful of contractors on the line, and then some people who are other. If you answered other, I'm kind of curious what your role is, so you can feel free to put that in the chat and let us know, but it's optional. And then looks like geographically, we actually have a really good mix. Looks like all over the Bay Area, and then some people that have properties outside of the Bay Area as well. So that's really exciting. And a few that are outside of California. Just to let you all know, the programs that I'll be covering, the BAMBE or the BayREN programs, are only available in the Bay Area. The SOMAH program is available statewide. And then if you have properties outside of California, unfortunately, those would not be eligible for any of the programs that we're planning to discuss today. But we're still happy to have you on. And then, okay, it looks like a number of the attendees have participated in some of these programs before. So that's also really great. So this might sound familiar to some of you. So maybe you can help with Q&A as well if you have gone through this program. All right, so why upgrade? What's the reasoning for having this webinar in the first place? Let's get into it. So California has some of the most ambitious climate and energy goals in the world. We've already committed as a state to commit to 100% clean energy or clean electricity by 2045, zero net carbon by 2050, reducing the state's greenhouse gas emissions by 40% and doubling its energy efficiency by 2030. So there's a lot of these targets. Don't need to know all the specific years, but just know this is happening. We're really ambitious, trying to get 100% clean energy, zero carbon, and we're trying to do it soon, within the next 10, 20 years, really. And so a lot needs to happen before then. Some things have already happened on a statewide level, and a lot has happened on the local level, including reach codes for mandating that new construction be all electric. A number of cities in the Bay Area have already passed rules like this, and more are currently working on them. And most of the focus so far has been on, on the statewide level, on electricity generation and on new construction. But in order for the state to meet its goals, we're also going to have to decarbonize the massive stock of existing buildings in the state. And there's a lot of them. And so, right now, there's not really anything mandatory for existing buildings to do, but it's possible or likely that over the next, 10 or 20 years, cities are going to start, coming up with strategies and policies to mandate that existing buildings, become more efficient and go all electric as well. So something to keep in mind as you think about, possibly getting ahead of some of those mandates. And so to decarbonize that whole building stock, that's a lot of buildings. There's over 14 million homes in California, 4.3 million or 31% of which are units in multifamily properties with 2 or more units. So that's a lot of units, a lot of homes in a short period of time to get those all off of dirty fossil fuels. And furthermore, according to the California Energy Commission's research that's cited below, or actually it's not cited here, but we can send out the link if anyone's interested. Multifamily housing disproportionately houses low-income families, with 47% of low-income Californians living in multifamily properties. And this chart also makes a similar point. So this is a little bit confusing, but what you're seeing here is in the bars is the total breakdown of number of households in the US and by income and whether they are owner or renter occupied. So you can see here, households making below 80% of the area median income are disproportionately renter occupied rather than own their units. And then what these dots show is for each income group, the percentage of their income that they spend on energy costs. So you see here, for households making under 80% AMI, on average, they spend between 6 and 15% of all of their total income on energy. So that's a lot, and you can imagine those funds are, could be better spent on other things. And another reason this is so important is not only are they have lower income to put towards energy, but the actual raw costs of what they're spending on energy in a lot of cases is higher because affordable or lower income homes more often are not very well weatherized, are not very efficient, and so they actually have higher energy costs just to heat their homes, even if it's a smaller home, for example. And then especially worrying on this is what some of us in this industry call the gas utility debt spiral. And this refers to the fact that natural gas itself is actually pretty cheap, but maintaining all of the associated infrastructure, think of like pipelines and things like that, is usually most of what you're paying for when you're paying utility for natural gas. And so these are all fixed costs. And so as more and more households start to transition off of gas and go towards all electric, all those fixed costs are going to stay the same, but just be shared among a smaller group of people and get passed on to those who are slower to make that switch. And so from an individual perspective, this does provide a really strong incentive to be an early adopter of electrification, get ahead of these rising gas costs. But from the more macro point of view, it's worrying and means that local and state governments, along with affordable housing providers, really have to take efforts now to ensure that low-income renters are not left behind and really caught in the middle of this utility debt spiral and paying for these, really high costs of gas, in again 10 or 20 years. And then finally, aside from equity, I think the last couple of years have made clear the need for resilience in our housing stock. We've seen a lot more of these public safety power shutoff events really all over California that PG&E does to prevent wildfires. And so we've seen, neighborhoods lose power for days at a time, potentially. And then also related to that with wildfires is poor air quality from wildfire smoke. So we want to make sure buildings are well sealed and have proper ventilation to keep that dirty air outside. Extreme heat has also come up. So there's going to be more and more households looking to add air conditioning in the future. And then, in California, we always live with the constant threat of a major earthquake that could potentially knock, electricity or gas infrastructure off the line for weeks at a time. And then, there's always other unforeseen disasters. For example, maybe a respiratory airborne virus that forces people to stay inside for long periods of time, as we've seen. So I think there's a lot to consider in terms of, not just achieving the energy goals, but doing so in a way that really makes us resilient against the impacts of climate change that are already happening. So what does it mean for you or your property if you do some of these deep energy retrofits that we'll be covering? So the first kind of reason is just simply to help you meet your bottom line. Energy efficiency measures can drastically lower energy costs, and oftentimes they more than pay for themselves over the lifetime of the equipment. And when paired with electrification of major appliances and on-site energy generation like solar panels, these savings are actually amplified, because if you're switching everything to electricity and then also adding a free source of electricity on your property, then that's just basically eliminating that entire cost. So planning for these comprehensive projects and following an optimal load order by starting with efficiency measures and then moving on to some of the larger systems can also lower the total demand, result in smaller upfront costs by allowing you to put in smaller HVAC systems or smaller solar panel arrays. So there's really some economies of scale here to doing these comprehensive projects that can really drastically lower energy bills. And also newer and more efficient appliances are just generally more reliable. And so less downtime means fewer maintenance costs, fewer calls to the facilities manager. The next big one is tenant satisfaction. As affordable housing developers, I'm sure your organizations, this is something you all really care deeply about. And deep energy retrofits really have the opportunity to really improve the quality of life of the residents in your building. So first is indoor air quality. Gas burning appliances create a lot of really harmful indoor air pollutants that if you switch to electric stoves, electric water heating, electric furnace, those indoor air pollutants can basically be eliminated. You eliminate the source of those pollutants. While at the same time, improving things like air sealing and ventilation in the building can keep dirty air from the outside from coming in. So it can really improve indoor air quality and health outcomes. Adding things like insulation, more efficient appliances can really increase comfort, make the temperature a little bit more standard year round, less extreme heat in the summer, less really cold days in the winter, as well as noise pollution is a big thing that tenants really love when their properties go through some of these programs. Again, finally, the increased reliability and the ability to keep the power online. If you add solar panels and electric appliances, it gives you the option to keep power online even when there's a blackout, which can really improve tenant quality of life in a lot of ways. And so not only is this the right thing to do, but preventing complaints and improving resident satisfaction lowers vacancy rates, which helps you avoid lost revenue from having vacant units, as well as costly staff time spent responding to all these complaints or managing leasing. And then finally, like I said, there's just a lot of potential changes coming down the line, either with more and more need for resilience against blackouts, or with potential rising gas prices and mandatory requirements. And so it's really important to try to do what you can to get ahead of these and be able to control the process a little bit more if you do it early. And then finally, if your organization are considering selling the property at any point, deep energy retrofits can really increase the value of the property and be a smart investment in that sense as well. So what does a sustainable and resilient multifamily building actually look like? So the way I like to think of it is there's kind of 3 E's to zero emission buildings or to decarbonization. I know decarbonization is a bit of a buzzword, which is confusing, has a really wide range of solutions, and people interpret it in different ways. But when it comes to buildings, I really think it can be broken down into, the first step, energy efficiency, second step, renewable energy, and then third step, electrification. So efficiency is often ignored for kind of these bigger, sexier solutions like solar panels, but it's really the catalyst that makes these other two, renewable energy and electrification possible. For instance, if you insulate your building to better retain heat or install appliances that don't use as much energy, then you can lower the total amount of clean energy that you need to be generated to power the building. And so if you have a small rooftop, this is a way to make sure that that rooftop is big enough to actually, to fit enough solar panels to fully power the building. If you are trying to install a new HVAC system, adding insulation and dual pane windows first can allow you to put in a smaller system that's a lot less costly and uses less energy. I think we all know the importance of switching our electricity supply from dirty fossil fuels like coal and natural gas to renewables like solar and wind. That one is pretty obvious. And then finally, once the building is efficient and powered by clean electricity, the final step would be to switch out all of the gas powered appliances to appliances that can run on the clean power that you now have access to. So although, for a long time, natural gas has been promised as a bridge fuel and cleaner than electricity, that's not really the case any longer. And one reason is just that the electricity grid has gotten a lot cleaner over the last decade. And the other is that a lot more research has shown that natural gas is really not as clean as we thought. It releases a lot of methane, a lot of really harmful greenhouse gases. And it will never be zero emission. There's always going to be emissions associated with that. Whereas electricity, it is possible to make it 100% greenhouse gas or emission free. And so again, that final step, once we have clean electricity, is to make sure that everything can take advantage of that clean electricity. Okay, so I mentioned efficiency. The big one here is weatherization, which refers to a building's passive ability to maintain like a consistent temperature and comfortable temperature. This includes adding insulation to the attic, the walls, the floors, sealing small cracks where air can come in or escape the building. So there's always cracks, right along window frames or electrical outlets, things like that. And so sealing those can actually maintain a lot of heat in the building. And then also things like insulating air ducts and water pipes can also really improve the efficiency of the building and your systems. To maximize efficiency, it's also important that large appliances like furnaces and water heaters are properly sized so that they're not working harder than they need to. In-unit appliances like refrigerators, laundry machines, and dishwashers can also be really big energy drains if they are past their useful lifespan. So if you still have, refrigerators that are from the 1960s or 70s, which, some buildings still do, then those are probably using 2 or 3 times more energy than they need to, and really adding a lot of expenses to your residents' utility bills. And then finally, with the rise of solar power, which has really become a major source of energy in the state, but it does not provide power at all times of the day, as everyone knows. So it's not just important to consider how much energy you're using, but actually when you're using it, because energy during the day, when solar is active, is a lot cleaner. The grid, has all that solar power, so it's a lot cleaner to use energy, during the middle of the day, like right now, as opposed to in the evening when a lot of those renewables go offline and we have to rely more on these fossil fuel peaker plants. And so things like smart thermostats or grid connected heat pump water heaters, for example, can help to kind of automate and shift some of that electricity use to times when electricity is both cleanest and cheapest. Okay, and clean energy. When it comes to this, the ideal solution would be for every building to have its own on-site solar panels and sufficient battery storage. And depending on the structure, it's possible to generate more energy than the building consumes and actually sell that back to the grid. And it also allows for the possibility, in the case of a blackout, of islanding the building. So if the larger energy grid goes offline, if your building, still has solar panels and batteries, it's possible that, you can keep the power on in your building, even if the rest of the neighborhood is blacked out. However, we know this is not always an option. SOMAH definitely helps make this an option for affordable properties, but in the case that, you don't have the right kind of roof space or another reason, it's still possible to provide your building with clean energy without solar panels. And that's through your local community choice aggregator. These are nonprofits that essentially work by procuring the electricity on behalf of their constituents, and then they still rely on PG&E to handle distribution and billing. And so you can see here, almost the entire Bay Area is covered by CCA, and there's a lot of benefits to these, which I'm not going to go into too much detail on. But one of the really cool benefits is they usually offer multiple rate options, which means you can opt up and actually pay just for a couple dollars more a month in most cases. Basically ensure that 100% of the electricity that you are consuming at your property, it comes from renewable or clean sources. So that's a great option. It's really easy if solar is not an option for you, or just kind of in the meantime before you can add solar. That's again a really great option to get the property onto clean energy. And then for electrification, the big thing here is heat pumps. Heat pump is a type of technology that works similarly to a refrigerator or an air conditioner, but in reverse. So basically it uses electricity to run a fan and then refrigerant fluid to absorb heat from the outside air and transfer that from one area to another. And so these are 300 to 400% efficient, which I know doesn't sound possible, but basically what that means, for every 1 unit of electricity that a heat pump consumes, it can move 3 to 4 units of heat into the tank of water or into the living room. And for comparison, even the most efficient gas heaters, water heaters, or furnaces max out at about 90% efficiency. So they're much, much more efficient, again, because they're simply moving heat rather than generating heat. And they have a couple other benefits too. So for example, with HVAC, they can work in both directions. And so if you currently have, say in-unit furnaces in your property, and your residents have been asking to add AC, replacing the current wall furnaces with heat pumps can actually fill both those needs. It can provide heating and cooling. So then you don't need to add additional air conditioning. And they're also really flexible, so they can basically be configured to fit any type of building. They can be central systems, in-unit, ductless systems. Really, they can be configured a lot of different ways. So these are really, 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 really great solutions for HVAC and water heating. And they're also an option for clothes drying and pool heating as well. Then the other major gas appliance in many homes is the gas cooking range. This is a solution we're actually really excited about, induction cooking, not only because of the emissions, but because of the indoor air quality implications. So induction cooking basically uses electromagnetic waves to heat up your cookware, and it can heat up a pot of boiling water in half the time as a gas stove. A lot of chefs really love these. I know there's a lot of aversion to induction because people associate them with those old, coil systems from the 70s that were terrible. Induction is a completely different technology. Again, a lot of chefs swear by it and prefer it to gas. It's more efficient, more powerful, and then again, it does not release a lot of the really harmful pollutants into the air. There's a lot of research that links gas stoves to childhood asthma. It's pretty shocking. I'm not going to go into too much detail on that, but that's just, again, another really big reason to try to make that switch to induction cooking. And then to complete the building's transition to being fully electric, might want to consider adding EV chargers if you have on-site parking. BayREN and SOMAH do not currently offer incentives for EV charging, but there are other resources out there that we can connect you to. So let us know if that's something you're interested in learning more about. We can provide some resources. And then finally, in many cases, especially for older buildings, in order to make these electrification upgrades, you will likely need to upgrade the electrical panel and add some additional capacity. So this is an extra cost. Again, some of that can be mitigated by doing really heavy efficiency first before electrification. And then there are also some of these local CCAs, as well as a new statewide program called TEC. The TEC initiative can also help to subsidize some of this cost of upgrading the electrical panel. All right, we're doing on time. A little bit behind, so I will try to speed up a little bit. So the Bay Area Multifamily Building Enhancement Program is the main program that I work on. Oops, sorry about that. It's administered by the Bay Area Regional Energy Network, or BayREN. BayREN is a collaboration of the 9 counties that make up the Bay Area. And the mission of BayREN is really to help California meet its climate goals by helping Bay Area residents and businesses save energy and money. So the BayREN has a number of programs for single family homeowners, multifamily properties, small businesses. BAMBE is our kind of main multifamily program. And all of the BayREN programs are funded through utility ratepayer funds. So there's a small charge on like the second or third page of your PG&E bill every month called the Public Purpose Program Surcharge. And essentially that goes to the state. Then the state reallocates it to groups like BayREN in order to provide these programs. So I always like to say, you're basically already paying for these programs. We just want you to be able to take advantage and really use it to help your organization and help your residents. So there's 2 main offerings of the BAMBE program. The first is no cost technical assistance. And as impactful as the rebates are, I really think this is the bread and butter of the program and what sets us apart from a lot of other kind of similar energy efficiency programs. So when you enroll in BAMBE, you will first be assigned a consultant or technical advisor with the Association of Energy Affordability, or AEA. If you're in San Francisco, you'll have a consultant from the city of San Francisco. But the rest of the Bay Area uses AEA. AEA is really kind of the leading experts in this space in California. So we're really proud to work with them on this program. And they're, again, really experts in a lot of the solutions that I already laid out for, what a sustainable building looks like and how those can interact with each other. So when you enroll, your TA would start with just an initial phone call to understand a little bit more about the property, what your goals and priorities are, any concerns you have. And based on your goals and priorities, they'll really use that as a starting point for the project. And so they'll schedule a comprehensive site visit of the property. They'll look at everything from, the HVAC, the water heating, what kind of windows and insulation you have, really the whole building, and use that to put together a model of how the building uses energy and a report for you with their findings and a long list of recommendations. So they would then work with you based on that list and those recommendations. They'll work with you to select an eligible scope of work of at least 3 or more measures. And again, this is totally free. If you start this process and decide it's not the right fit, or you don't want to move forward, there's no cost to that. You can always start, and you don't get forced into paying for anything later on. So then the second big offering of BAMBE is the rebates. So once you have settled on a scope of work with your advisor, you would reserve your rebate. You can set that aside for up to 6 months. You can then hire any licensed contractor to complete the project. And once it's completed, we would just come in, do a quick verification and gas safety check. And then you would receive a rebate of $750 per unit. We do also have a few options if you don't currently have the capital on hand to pay for the full project cost. Because the rebate covers a good portion of the cost. It really varies from project to project, but it doesn't cover usually quite 100%. So we have the option to receive 25% of the rebate amount upfront before beginning construction. And then we also have a lender referral service. So if you're interested in financing the project, we can help connect you with pre-vetted low interest lenders if that's something you're interested in. In 2020, we introduced a clean heating pathway. This is basically for properties that want to take that next step and do a lot of this electrification work. So if you If your project includes any gas to electric conversions as part of your scope of work, you can get additional incentives on top of the 750. It varies, so I'm not going to read through this whole list, but they are pretty significant and in a lot of cases can more than double the base rebate amount. We're also really excited because just a few months ago, the new statewide Tech Clean California initiative just rolled out. This is a statewide initiative that provides even more substantial incentives for electrification projects, and those can layer on top of a BAMBE clean heating pathway project. And so you're looking at, potentially if you go through both programs, do full electrification, thousands and thousands of dollars per unit for electrification. And we can, if you are interested in that, you don't need to enroll in both programs separately. You can just enroll in BAMBE, let your advisor know that you're interested in that, and then they can walk you through the options and what your incentive could be. Yeah, we have pretty flexible eligibility. Really, any property that's located in the Bay Area that has at least 5 or more units on site, they don't need to be attached, just 5 units on the same parcel can be eligible. Affordable properties do get priority, so you can just get right in without having to go on a wait list. And then again, to actually receive the rebate, an eligible scope of work would have to have at least 3 or 4 unique measures that are modeled to reduce the total energy load of the property by 10 to 15% or more. But it's really flexible on what measures you can choose. And we really work with you to find something that works for you. So again, it's a pretty straightforward process. You just enroll online, go through that technical assistance, which can take really anywhere from a few weeks up to a few months, depending on your availability and how quickly you're hoping to move. Reserve your rebate, then have 6 months to install the upgrade, and then you can claim the rebate. So fairly straightforward. And to get started, here is the interest form. So we'll send this link out. We're also going to have a survey at the end of this webinar. If you want me or someone else from the program to reach out to you, you can let us know and we can reach out to you and help you with this. But it only takes about 5 minutes. And actually, sorry, one other point I want to make really quickly is on the timeline of the project. We do, one, require that everyone fills out an interest form. So even if you've already gone through the program once and looking to the second phase, or if you've gone through with a different property, you do still need to start with an interest form just so it's in our system. And then also, we do require that you go through this technical assistance before beginning construction. So even if you already know exactly what work you want to do, and if you want to be able to receive that rebate, you need to start with technical assistance. Once you've started the construction, we can't actually calculate the energy savings at the property, and then we can't provide the rebate in that case. So just something to keep in mind if you already have a really clear project in mind, is to move quickly and let us know, and we can try to expedite the process. All right, that was a lot of talking. Kai, so I'll move it over to you to talk a little bit more about SOMAH.
Great. And before I dive into SOMAH, I did mention in the chat that we've got some really good questions that kind of bridge between the two programs. I'd like to answer a few of those now, and then also Chris will be answering some of them in the chat directly. The ones that I can answer really quickly, and that I'm hoping maybe Chris can also help answer, is for Josh, you mentioned that there's been a lot of messaging around avoiding energy use from 4 to 9, and that there's no solar after 9. So are we telling people that they should minimize their energy use after 4? So I can speak from the side of the incentive programs, but there are also battery storage incentive programs, one of which we have put into the Q&A section, that can be used where that battery is storing the extra energy that you generate throughout the day, and then that can turn on in the evening. There's also demand response programs where you can kind of get alerted as to when, what times of day are going to have the peak energy use from your utilities, and try to decrease your usage there, sometimes with an incentive. Chris, anything you want to add to that question?
No, that's great.
Okay, perfect. The next question I wanted to jump into before we get into SOMAH is the question around working in Lower Bay Area. And that one particularly is a good question because it is based on light as opposed to heat. So it will generate less on an overcast and foggy day, but it won't stop the system from generating. Then to the Jessica's question about AEA site visits being considered to meet the energy efficiency audit. So we are actually working on the back end between SOMAH and BAMBE to further smooth out that process. But technically, yes, your AEA site visits can meet the SOMAH energy efficiency audit requirement. And we actually have one of our technical specialists on the line here, so she may jump in and help answer questions with me. But what we have with our technical specialists is they walk everyone through what do you expect going into working on SOMAH, and how can you leverage other programs to maximize your solar program system to meet that energy efficiency requirement so that you're not going out and paying for an energy efficiency audit. So with that, because of time, I'm going to dive into the SOMAH ones. I know that Chris will be answering some questions in the chat, and then we'll see a bit more, or we'll take some time at the tail end to answer a few more questions. So with that, as we said, my name is Kaisa Hendrickson, and I am a project manager on the SOMAH program. And I'm going to go a little bit higher level for what we do with SOMAH because it is a bit more of an involved process, but it's also a particularly exciting process and program. And it's really helping move that decarbonization effort forward for multifamily properties across the state. So we can go to the next slide. So a couple things about SOMAH. First, that this program really is the first of its kind, and it is a pioneer in terms of both economic inclusion and community change. The program has mixed benefits for both tenants and property owners. It requires job training, and it really was created with communities to help make sure that the program doesn't just come in, install solar, and then leave, but so that the solar is a benefit to everyone who's living in the building. So that's part of why it's pioneering. The other part is to our understanding so far, it is the largest solar incentive program in the country. It runs for 10 years and is up to $100 million per year provided. And so that's up to $1 billion program. And that money is coming from cap and trade funds. So that is not ratepayer funds, and that is not taxpayer funds. So that is all cap and trade offset funds that pay for the program incentive. And the program really is designed to help close access between who has access to solar and who benefits from. So just like Chris was talking about, that renters tend to have the least amount of access to clean energy, to energy efficiency initiatives. And so SOMAH is not designed to try and get all multifamily properties to just start adopting solar. It's acknowledging that multifamily properties really need that extra funding to input solar, even with the decrease in cost. So our goal is to really close that gap and make sure that particularly low-income multifamily affordable housing across California has access to solar, and that the tenants and the property owners get benefit from it. So one of the other big ambitious parts of the program is that the goal over those 10 years is to get a 300 megawatt installation, or to install 300 megawatts of solar. And that 300 megawatts is, to give you an idea of how ambitious it is, SOMAH's predecessor program, the MASH program, was about a 30 to 35 megawatt goal. So SOMAH has drastically increased the goal so that we can really help meet California's carbon targets. And then particularly in terms of the potential impact of the program, is that the program's goal is that across those 10 years, that there are up to 255,000 households across California that could be impacted by this. And that's made up of roughly 3,500 to 4,000 multifamily properties across the state. And I'll get into the requirements and which areas of the state are acceptable, but the Bay Area is all included in SOMAH's requirements. So with that, let's go through a couple of the benefits of the program. Obviously, as we talked about, the first one is it's an incentive for solar. And particularly, it incentivizes not just the installation of solar. So it does provide installation incentives for actually covering the cost of the system. And we'll get into how that can work for both the property owner or the contractor. But then it also offsets the cost of, using a mechanism called virtual net metering, it allows both the property owner and the tenant to get energy bill savings throughout the life cycle of the system, so that the energy that the system is generating gets sent back to the grid, and then they get credits directly to their energy bill. And so for some tenants, we've seen that have a really drastic impact on their energy impact, into what Chris was saying, almost that energy burden that is particularly growing across California, where individuals are having to face the choice between being able to pay for medicine or being able to afford gas versus being able to afford their gas in their car versus their energy bills. So this decrease that it offers to tenants and property owners is a very important part of the program. And then, of course, the program has, similar to what BAMBE talks about, a free technical assistance and support services. And all of this comes through some services that I'm going to explain next that really are designed to remove barriers for property owners and make it as little work as possible for property owners to participate. Next slide. So then to get into what those services include, these are what we call our technical assistance services. They are 100% free, which, to give you some context, in a lot of other states that have similar programs and similar offerings, property owners either have to get loans to get technical assistance, but they do have to pay for it through some kind of an external service. SOMAH covers all of it completely. And as you can see from our little wheel here, that this includes everything throughout the life cycle of the program. These are designed to offer support to multiple or affordable housing organizations and really give it so that everyone has equal access, because applying for solar is complicated and hard, and we want to take away all of those burdens. So these services cover everything from determining the feasibility of solar on your property, to providing financial analysis, to helping solicit bids from contractors and connecting you to contractors. It helps with interconnection support. So we work with the utility, we would work with PG&E in those areas, and then referring you to other energy efficiency programs like BAMBE. And we strongly encourage all participants to use these services, even though we actually have two options with the program. And that is that SOMAH has the option for property owners, if they are already experienced with solar and they already are working with a contractor, to just apply for the program directly. But if property owners are new to solar and new to working with contractors, then they can go through this technical assistance support, and we will walk them through everything start to finish. So giving an idea of our incentive rates, and we'll actually go, as Chris mentioned, we'll go through and give you some examples through one of our case studies, but this shows the incentive program, or the program incentive rate from October 30th, 2021 through June 30th of 2022. And it's important to note that the SOMAH program does have an incentive step down. So every single year in June, the program incentive decreases slightly. So it is important for folks to get in as early as possible so that they get the highest incentive rate. And as you'll see here, there's the common area incentive rate and the tenant area incentive rate. And the incentive rate for tenants, you'll see, is a good deal higher. And that is to encourage having more of the system allocated to tenants. And we require that 51% of the system's generating power go towards tenants. And what we've actually seen is closer to 85 or 90% of the systems being allocated to tenants. So, and you can also see which tax credits have which impacts on the incentive rates. Some of the incentive rates do depend on whether additional funding sources are available. And it also will, how you get that is going to depend on the contractor and the property owner. So depending on the agreement that they have about who owns the system or what kind of financing process they use, that will impact who gets that incentive, but the incentive still comes out that way. So to show quickly on the next slide where our incentive rates are, as you can see for Pacific Gas and Electric, we have quite a bit of funding available. This is as of this past fall, and we are excited to say that we have had a flood of applications come in last fall and spring, and we still have this amount of funding, and this amount of funding does re-up each year. So we are currently at about $257 million across the state with all territories, and $89 million in PG&E alone. With that said, applications are on a first come, first served basis. Next slide goes into our program eligibility. So we have slightly more strict eligibility requirements compared to the BAMBE program. So similarly, we do have to have at least 5 units to meet the multifamily requirement. It does need to be deed restricted low income housing. It cannot be a new building. It has to be an existing or retrofit building. And it has to be virtual net metering with separately metered units. And that ties into one of the questions we received around the new net metering or net energy metering bills and requirements. Because the program requires this virtual net energy metering, the current proposal for the net energy metering 3.0 does not impact the SOMAH program. And then our next requirements are that it has to meet one of these two components. First, either that it is located in a disadvantaged community as defined by Cal EnviroScreen. And right now we are including Cal EnviroScreen 3.0 and 4.0. We just moved to 4.0 last year. Or have 80% of the residents at incomes below 60% of the area median income. So with that, we can go on to our next slide. And would just like to say that you've gotten a really quick high-level overview of the program, and there's two options for getting started. You are welcome to go directly to our website and submit an application for us to reach out to you and start working with you. Or you can request an interest call from our property owner team, who are happy to talk to you about identifying where someone might fit best in your portfolio. And nonprofit affordable housing providers can speak specifically with one of our staff members, Rachel Diaz from the California Housing Partnership, to talk about how that particularly pertains to affordable or to nonprofit housing. With that, I will hand it back over to Chris.
Great, thank you. So we are running a little short on time, so we're going to go through this quickly, but we do have an exciting case study to share about a property in Contra Costa County, 112 unit affordable property that was able to participate and take advantage of both programs. So it's the Via Medanos property. And they went through the BAMBE program, I believe in 2017 or 18, a couple of years ago. And they, because it's 112 units, 750 per unit, they were able to receive an $84,000 rebate from us to lower their energy costs by a little over 11% overall. And again, that was split between in-unit and common area energy savings, but so it's fairly significant saving amount. And the scope of work was actually a pretty typical scope from what we see. So there, you see, there weren't any, major disruptive things like, changing the HVAC or water heating system, but they switched out all the single pane windows for dual pane. Switched out old incandescent or fluorescent lighting with hardwired LED lighting, both in unit and common areas. Put in more efficient refrigerators and dishwashers in all of the units. And then added some low flow shower heads and faucets. And then finally added a heat pump pool heater. The heat pump pool heater, this is actually before the clean heating pathway was introduced. And so this specific measure was incentivized through a separate pilot program that's no longer quite active. But now, if they were to go through the program right now with the same exact scope, they would actually get a slightly higher rebate because they would be able to take advantage of the clean heating pathway for this heat pump pool heater. But yeah, it was a great project. Again, pretty typical, and shows really these were all efficiency measures that I think made the solar project a little bit more impactful when they did eventually go through that. And they were really satisfied. They said the technical advisors were really helpful, explained everything at every step of the process, and really made for a streamlined and simple approach. And then, guys, if you want to talk about the SOMAH aspect of that project.
Definitely. So we were really excited to get to talk about this project, and particularly to have one that already was working with both ourselves and BAMBE. So to go back to how we structured the program, the incentive for tenants has to be, again, above 51%. So this one actually allocated 77% of the system to benefit tenants directly, and then 22% goes to the common area electricity bills. And this one, per our projections as of right now, this one's just getting finished up. So all of this is projections. So for the first year, we anticipate that the overall common area net income is going to be about $12,000. And then as you can see, that substantially increases over the life of the system. So by year 10, that net income is going to be closer to 125,000. And by year 20, that would be closer to 250,000. Likewise, you can see that for the year one tenant total savings, that's about 39,000, with each individual tenant saving $350. And we've seen that range up to, we've even had tenants where closer to 90% of their monthly bill was covered by the system. We can go to the next slide. And then a little bit of feedback that we got from the property owner in terms of what motivated them, what impact they saw, were first that the motivation was that they are Section 42 affordable properties. And so they had a really strong focus on green initiatives and anything that could help reduce their operating costs. So SOMAH helped meet that goal. And then the impact, they said, both for the common area and in-unit utilities have decreased from a combination of both BAMBE and SOMAH, and that their experience, that they had a wonderful time working with the program and everyone that is here on the SOMAH side to take care of them. And an important part to mention there on the impact of BAMBE and SOMAH, and Chris touched on this as well, is that any of these energy efficiency measures happening before you install solar are the goal. And that's why we have our technical assistance specialist, is to make sure that you're not installing solar on a system that is inefficient or has outdated materials, so that by the time you really are installing that solar, you're getting the absolute maximum impact from the program. So to kind of recap on what our benefits of both are, obviously through BAMBE, you have the flexibility to choose between those wide range of measures. You get the hands-on support and the streamlined process of referrals to other programs. With SOMAH, you have your increased system due to BAMBE inclusion. You get your decreased energy bill and your carbon offset, and technical assistance specialists that go across both and actually communicate with one another. And that dual enrollment and handoff between our programs, and of course, being seen as a green leader.
Okay, so we have just a couple of additional programs we want to refer you to. I mentioned the Tech Clean California initiative. Again, these are additional incentives for electrification projects that can be stacked or layered on top of BAMBE. So if you go through the clean heating pathway, there's really no reason not to also add these on. So these make these projects even that much more economical and great to pursue. And again, you don't need to enroll separately in that. I would just prefer enroll in BAMBE first. And then if you're interested in that, we can help make those connections and figure that out for you. I mentioned there's a number of CCAs that cover different counties. So we're not going to cover all of those programs because there's a lot of them and they wouldn't be relevant for everyone. But different CCAs offer different incentives. Some of them offer EV charging incentives. Some of them have in-unit additional incentives for in-unit upgrades for income qualified tenants. I know MCE, which covers most of the North Bay, has some really great incentives on that front. And then there's also some additional solar and storage measures that are available to a slightly wider subset of properties. So if you are not eligible for SOMAH, you might be able to get help installing solar and storage through your CCA. There's also the low income weatherization program, which again provides more funding for income qualified programs. There was a question about new construction. There's a new program that's just launching. This is again a statewide program, and this will provide incentives and technical assistance for new construction. So encourage you to look at this. But then finally, like I mentioned, there are a number of financing options available. We'll send the slides out so that you can click on these links once we send the slides out. All right, to enroll, you can either contact me for the BAMBE program or contact SOMAH to get ready in that. Again, when you close out of this webinar, you'll have a survey pop up on your screen. One of the questions on the survey will ask you if you want someone to reach out to you from either of these programs to help you with the enrollment. So you don't even need to go to these links, just answer that survey and we can get in touch with you to help you out, get started. And that is all we have. So it's 11:57. There's a few more questions. I'm personally happy to stay on a few minutes longer to help with Q&A. If there's more questions, then we can answer.
Same here. Happy to answer any questions. I am trying to type a few answers into the chat as we go, but if there's anything that we missed, please let us know. Yeah, there's a lot. If you want to look back, so you can look on the Q&A and go to the answer tab and see what other questions people asked. Let's see. Yes. I see you're typing one right now. Yes, and I think Stacey might be best.
Yeah, there's one more from Hank.
Yeah, Stacey's answering this question right now.
Or if it's easier for either of you, you can just kind of answer that live as well.
Yes, and like we said at the beginning, we're going to put in a survey at the tail end so you can indicate your interest, and someone from our team will reach out from whichever program you indicate your interest. Someone will reach out to answer any questions. We have fantastic teams of technical assistance folk and property owner folks, as well as for contractors who are interested in contracting with SOMAH. Please let us know and we'll follow up and send you all of the information on how to do that. Particularly, I noticed there was a question about our marketing materials online. All of that gets covered in our online or our kind of initial kickoff for contractors.
I just saw a question come in the chat. Will there be a separate webinar for builds? Also, sorry for the noise. I have my window because it's hot in here. I got up to like 85 while I was doing my presentation in my room. But will there be a separate webinar? I don't know. We don't work on that program, but we can send out the information after the. Oh, great.
So, yep, we can have Rachel pop in there.
Hi, great question. Right now, we're expecting Build to launch in Q2 of this year. As of right now, there's no concrete date set for a webinar, but there will be one definitely announcing program launch. But for folks that might be interested in Build, I dropped in the contact information for folks to email if they're interested.
Rachel. And just, I see there have been a few questions come in, confused about new construction versus existing. BAMBE only covers existing buildings. And even within existing buildings, it has to be replacing, if you, for example, want to get a rebate for adding new water heaters, it has to be replacing existing water heaters. You can't, add units and then get a rebate for that. So again, BAMBE is only for existing construction, so is SOMAH. If you have new construction, that new builds program would be the best approach for you.
And the reason being that with the new regulations that are kind of putting more requirements in place for newer buildings, these programs are really designed to close the stuff that's already been in place, and so that it doesn't, so that the money is going towards buildings that were built before regulations were put into place requiring more energy efficiency. And so to answer Echo's question, then it sounds like that would not qualify for BAMBE.
All right, well, don't see any more questions. We're at 12:01, so I think we can go ahead and close it. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Hope this is helpful. Again, there's a survey when you close the webinar if you want someone to reach out, and we'll be sending out the recording and the slides within the next few days.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you all again for joining and for your commitment to using these incentive programs and making your buildings greener.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Okay.